Space, the last frontier. Over the past decades, mankind has made leaps in discoveries of the universe. Landing a man on the moon, the discovery of super-Earths, gigantic stars, and everything up to the scale of the observable universe. But what if I told you that space ended much closer than we are led to believe? My name is James and I was in charge of monitoring the activity of Voyager 1, who had just passed the solar system, reaching interstellar space. All was going fine until we noticed its speed began to slow down, slower and slower each day, and then one day it had just stopped transmitting data. We didn't know what to make of it but concluded that a meteor had collided with it, destroying the satellite, which was depressing news for the scientific community. But just before it cut off, it had captured a final recording, which we could not transmit on our end, but the satellite was still partially active since its GPS was still active, indicating its last position. This satellite was too important to not recover, and at this time NASA had developed a spaceship capable of traveling to the edge of the solar system in 1 year. So, I along with a few colleagues volunteered for the recovery mission. Me, Johnson, a former Marine, Lindsay, and Professor Winston, who was one of our best scientists, but also a man of Christianity too. He believed the findings from space was part of God's amazing creation of reality and sought to understand it beyond religious teaching. We went through months of training and found ourselves in the cockpit of the spaceship getting ready for the journey. Fast forward, we all are getting ready for our cryo sleep. Lindsay was the last person I saw and she said, "See you in a year, James." She had such a beautiful smile that I felt at peace before drifting off into my slumber. As I awoke from sleep, we arrived and we could see the vast celestial bodies. It was beautiful. Professor Winston said, "There she is, everybody, Voyager 1, well, what's left of her, that is." Lindsay said, "That's strange. Doesn't look like it got hit by a meteor." I agreed. The satellite was not in good shape, but it appeared similar to a car getting a dent and a collision with a meteor. I got suited up and was ready for the spacewalk to recover the Voyager's data. I radioed to my colleagues, "Everything checks out, guys." They gave me the green light and I was on my way. It was very odd being out this deep in space, the cosmos, stars, and everything just looked so vast, not to mention the darkness even. With floodlights you just felt so small out there. I approached Voyager 1, couldn't believe it made it this far since 1977. Strange, however, as I looked onto the vastness of space again, the stars and celestial bodies appeared different, as if I was looking at them from a different angle. My colleagues then radioed, "Everything alright out there?" I replied, "Yes, sorry, just got distracted is all." I recovered the Voyager's data and brought it back to the ship. We then downloaded the data onto the computer and got the video feed going. It was about 1 minute of footage before the Voyager met its end. It was going through space like normal, and what happened next just didn't make sense. It's as if the Voyager just hit an invisible wall, then the video went black. Johnson said, "Must be a glitch in the feed." Professor Winston, "Maybe it was the meteor and we just couldn't see it on the feed." Lindsay replied, "No, it definitely bounced off something." I spoke, "I'm going back out there. If it is some sort of invisible wall, we can find out for ourselves." Lindsay looked at me with a look of concern. "James, just be careful out there, okay?" I said, "I will be fine, don't worry." I went back out for a second spacewalk and made my way to where I thought the wall may be. Sure enough, when I reached my hand out, it pressed up against an invisible wall. What was even more creepy was the celestial bodies I saw before. As I approached the wall, they changed angles as if I was looking at a drawing on a piece of paper and moving to the side only for the image to disappear. I grazed my hand around, and where there should have been a star, my finger went right through like it was a hole in a box. I yanked back my hand out of instinct, my heart racing ever so slightly. I said, "What, guys, did you see what just happened?" Lindsay replied, "Oh my god, those aren't stars, they're holes." Even the celestial bodies, which stretched out to a vast distance, were flat to the touch, with more holes in place of stars. Then my hand hit something that sunk me in deeper, as if I hit a hidden door. Then a portion of the wall moved and nothing but white light was shining through. It was about 10 feet tall, big enough for anyone to go through. Professor Winston spoke, "My god, this is amazing. James, this goes beyond anything we have known about space itself." Johnson spoke, "Did he just find a doorway into another universe?" Professor Winston said only 2 words to me, "Go inside." Lindsay quickly replied, "What? No, are you insane? We don't even know what's beyond that. We could lose James for all we know." Professor Winston said, "Lindsay, please, this could be the next page into the history books." They began to argue over the intercom when I interrupted and said, "I'm going to check it out. If I don't come back in 5 minutes, pull me back out." Lindsay said, "James, you better not get lost out there." I replied, "I won't, Lindsay, I still have that dinner to take you to." I saw her smile on the screen of my visor as she said, "You better now go out there and make history." I turned my front camera on, took a deep breath, and stepped into the light. It was white, pure white. The only thing that wasn't was the dark square form which I entered. I kept walking until I hit the extent of my safety cord that connected me to the ship. I returned to the ship and convinced everyone to suit up and make our way to the doorway. Lindsay decided to stay back at the ship and kept in communication with us. Somehow our radio still worked on the other side. As we were in space, we had these devices connected to our suits that expelled little bursts of air to push through space. To not be limited by the safety cord's length, we made our way without that and entered the doorway. Immediately we noticed a change in gravity. We were no longer floating, it felt as if we were back on Earth. We decided to continue to walk and suddenly we saw someone standing in the middle back face towards us, wings stuck out of its back, and we froze. Lindsay spoke to the radio. "Is that an angel?" Professor Winston shouted out, "Hello." Then it spoke, "I see, so you have crossed the waters." Johnson replied, "Waters? Who are you?" The angel-like creature turned around, eyes covered its body from head to toe that put a chill down my spine. "You shouldn't be here, you know. There's a reason why that wall is there in the first place." Professor Winston replied, "My goodness, what is this place? Heaven." The angel spoke, "Indeed." It then morphed into a human. The angel spoke, "There, I hope that helps. Our true forms can be quite frightening to you humans." I said, "Wait, so this place is heaven and that wall back there separates heaven from our universe?" The angel replied, "I guess I do not have to explain that part now, do I? Tell me, did you come looking to find God?" I replied, "It was honestly by accident we found this place." The angel replied, "I see, well then would you like to meet God?" I paused for a bit. That's when Professor Winston replied, "Yes, please can you take us?" The angel gestured as if for us to follow him. Lindsay spoke to my intercom, connected to only my helmet. "James, be careful, something doesn't seem right here." We entered some sort of room with chairs and were told to sit here while the angel left down some sort of hallway. A few minutes later it came back and took Professor Winston with it and told Johnson and I, "Please wait, as God will be meeting you all one at a time." After a few more minutes passed, Johnson stood up and said, "I'm not waiting here, James. I want to go see this for myself. This seems too good to be true." I replied, "James, what do you mean?" Johnson replied, "You mean to tell me that the wall separates heaven from our universe? We just walk into their backyard, and they just let us meet God right away. James, if this really was heaven, then haven't you noticed?" I replied, "Notice what?" Johnson spoke, "That thing never told us to remove our space suits." A cold chill rose up my spine when he said that. Johnson spoke, "I'm getting Winston and we are leaving this place." Lindsay spoke to me, "James, no, just come back to the ship, we can just go home." I replied to her, "Lindsay, we can't just leave Winston behind, but if anything happens, I will come right back, I promise." Johnson and I made our way down the hall. Once we passed a doorway, things became dark. The white light no longer shined, and the area was so dark we could barely see. Then we heard the screams. We followed the screams and that's when we saw Professor Winston. He was strapped to a medical bed and was yelling for help as these things were surrounding him. Scaly, reptilian-like beings performing medical experiments on Winston. He laid there naked, his skull cap removed exposing his brain. His eyes were held open. He looked terrified as these beings split his scrotum open. He yelled in pain and this reptilian-like being taller than the rest sealed his mouth shut with some substance. Drill-like machines burrowed their way into his body as his muffled screams could be heard. A black-like substance was being pumped into his veins as these beings just stared at Winston motionless. Johnson said in a whisper, "What the hell?" That's when we heard movement and something grabbed Johnson, barely missing me as I ducked in time. It was this alien-type being. Johnson tried to fight it, pulling out a knife, and stabbed the alien in the eye. It shrieked, dropping Johnson. He was about to run back to me when the tall reptilian creature grabbed him and ripped his helmet off and threw him back into the room with Winston. The other beings began to drag him to a table as he screamed, trying to fight them off, but it was hopeless as he became overpowered. I wanted to help him, but even now thinking about this, it was useless. The other reptilian-like beings saw me too and were approaching as I made a run for it. Running in a spacesuit even in normal gravity is hard enough, but adrenaline does wonders. I made it into the doorway, leading me back into the light as I frantically looked for the black square that led me home. As I ran, I saw it began to close. I ran so hard, faster than I ever thought possible, and slid right before it could enclose on me. I made it, but then the doorway began to open again, with those creatures not too far behind. I quickly tried to close the doorway the same way I opened it, while Lindsay urging me to hurry. "Hurry, James, you have to close it." I pushed around the doorway hoping something would happen, and just before those things grabbed me, the door closed. Nothing but silence, no thud, no banging, just silence. I just floated there in shock when Lindsay's voice brought me back. "James, we have to leave now." I finally made it back to the ship, nearly out of breath due to the oxygen in my suit at its limit. Lindsay gave me a hug and said, "You crazy son of a bitch, thought I was going to lose you too. Now let's get the fuck out of here." We set out coordinates to Earth, and just like that, we returned home. We officially told NASA that the data from the Voyager 1 was corrupted. As for the other two men, their security cords broke off, and we were unable to rescue them. There was no way in hell we were going to tell them the truth. For the greater good of mankind, there are some things humans are not meant to know. I still have nightmares thinking about it. Sometimes I look up at the stars and wonder if maybe it was just a dream, convincing myself that what I knew of space and the universe was normal. Lindsay and I ended up getting engaged, had a family, and moved far away. One night I was at my cabin with the family and went outside to smoke a cigarette. I was outside for a few minutes when I dropped my cigarette. I saw a light flickering in the sky. It's getting closer. I think they are coming for me, and maybe for you too. Thank you to my superfans, Sweet Black Swan, Tacy, and Brooklyn. I really appreciate you guys supporting my channel, and I look forward to making more content for everyone.